My name's Claire, and I've always been the type to notice things other people miss. Small things. The way someone's jaw tightens, how long they hold eye contact. That Tuesday morning in March, I noticed my husband Marcus didn't kiss me goodbye like he usually did. We were in the conference room. He stood up from the table, told everyone in that calm, practiced voice that his mother was sick, really sick, and he needed to catch a flight to Tampa to be with her. His hand even shook a little when he said it. Perfect detail. I almost believed him. Except I'd texted his mother that morning about dinner plans. She'd replied within minutes, "Can't wait. See you Thursday." I watched him leave the building from the third-floor window. He got into a yellow cab heading toward the interstate. My hands were steady as I grabbed my keys. My mind was already moving 3 steps ahead, which I guess is when I stopped being the wife who believed him and became something else entirely.
The airport was 30 minutes away. I needed to know where he was actually going. I met Marcus 7 years ago at a networking event. He was confident without being obnoxious, the kind of man who listened more than he talked, or at least that's what I thought back then. My best friend Sarah warned me early on. "He's got a wall," she said. "You can't see behind it." I thought she was being dramatic. We got married after 3 years. A small wedding, just close people. Sarah was my maid of honor. She cried during my vows, but when Marcus said his, she kept her hands folded in her lap. The safe place in my marriage was our kitchen. That's where Marcus actually seemed present. He'd cook on Sunday mornings. Scrambled eggs, good coffee, toast with real butter. We'd sit at the counter, and he'd tell me stories about work, about his childhood, about things that mattered. Those mornings felt real in a way nothing else did. But everywhere else, there was distance. He'd come home late, his phone always face down on the table. When I asked about his day, I got single-sentence answers. When I tried to plan a vacation, he'd find reasons it wasn't the right time. Sarah stopped coming around as much. When I asked her why, she just said, "I don't like watching this." I never asked her to explain what she meant. The airport parking lot was nearly empty. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, watching the entrance. I wasn't shaking. That's what surprised me. How calm I felt, like my body already knew what my brain hadn't confirmed yet. Marcus walked through the doors 40 minutes after I'd left the office. He wasn't rushing. He had a small carry-on bag, dark blue, the one I'd never seen before. He rolled it like he knew exactly where he was going. I followed him inside, staying 3 people back. He went straight to the International Departures Board. His eyes scanned the flights. Then he moved toward the ticket counter for Caribbean Airlines. Caribbean Airlines, not Tampa, not his mother. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, "Can you call me in 5 minutes? I need a witness on the phone." She called exactly when I asked. I held the phone to my ear, not speaking, just listening, while she said my name twice, confused. Marcus was at the counter now, handing over his ID. I watched the agent scan his passport. I watched him hand over a credit card. "I'm here," I whispered to Sarah. "At the airport. He's buying a ticket to Cancun." "What?" Sarah's voice went sharp. "Claire, what are you—" "I need you to remember this conversation," I said quietly. "I need you to be able to tell people exactly what you heard." Marcus picked up his boarding pass. He was smiling. The revelation hit me in layers, not all at once. First, the lie. Not a small one. A constructed, detailed lie. His mother wasn't sick. She was fine. He'd planned this trip, bought the ticket, packed a bag I'd never seen. That meant days of deliberate deception. Second, he wasn't going alone. I realized it when I saw him walk toward the cafe and sit down across from a woman I recognized. Her name was Jennifer. She worked in his department. I'd met her at a company holiday party 18 months ago. She had red hair and a nervous laugh, and Marcus had introduced her as one of the junior analysts. He held her hand across the table. Third, the money. While I was sitting in our kitchen paying bills, worrying about our mortgage, saying no to things I wanted because we needed to be careful, he was buying surprise trips to Cancun. How long had this been happening? How much had he spent? Fourth, and this was the one that made me go very still, I realized I didn't actually know my husband at all. Not really. That wall Sarah had mentioned 7 years ago? It wasn't just a wall, it was a fortress, and inside it was someone I'd never met. I watched them for 10 more minutes. Jennifer laughed at something he said. He kissed her knuckles like they were in some old movie. I stopped being angry then. Anger requires surprise. What I felt instead was clarity, sharp and cold and useful. I didn't confront him. That would have been the expected move, the emotional one. Instead, I went home and sat at our kitchen counter, that safe place, and I made a list. First, I documented everything. I opened our bank accounts online and took screenshots of every transaction from the past 18 months. The Caribbean Airlines ticket, hotels in Cancun under his name, restaurants, a jewelry store in Miami I'd never heard of. I saved everything to an encrypted folder on my laptop. Then, I called a divorce attorney. Not to file papers yet, just to listen. To understand what I was entitled to, what assets were marital property, what counted as infidelity in our state. The attorney, a woman named Patricia with reading glasses on a chain, explained it all in a calm, clinical way. Community property, alimony, the fact that his affair wasn't technically relevant to the divorce itself, but it mattered for how we split things. "Do you want to confront him first?" she asked. "No," I said, "not yet." I went back to work like nothing had happened. I smiled at Marcus when he came back from his emergency trip to see his mother. He looked tanned, relaxed. He kissed my forehead and said his mom was doing better, thank God. I nodded and said I was glad. That night I lay next to him in bed and listened to him breathe. And I didn't feel anything, not rage, not sadness, just the cold satisfaction of someone who finally understands the game being played. The pressure started subtle. Marcus began coming home earlier, being more attentive. He'd bring me coffee in the morning. He'd suggest we go out to dinner, somewhere nice. It was like he was trying to rebalance something, to convince me, or maybe himself, that everything was fine. I let him. I needed time. I needed to make sure my ducks were in a row. As my mother used to say, I hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny he'd moved. I got copies of his phone records through legal means my attorney had explained. I documented the timeline of his lies. Every detail mattered. Sarah came over one afternoon while Marcus was at work. She sat on our couch, the one we'd picked out together, the one that suddenly felt like a prop in someone else's story, and she didn't say, "I told you so." She just held my hand and listened while I explained what I'd found. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said. And I meant it. Marcus started pushing harder by the second week. He suggested a vacation, just the two of us, maybe somewhere romantic. His voice had that edge to it, the one that meant he was nervous about something. Maybe Jennifer had gotten clingy. Maybe he was worried I was slipping away. I told him I'd think about it. I was thinking about a lot of things, but not vacation plans. I was thinking about the moment when he'd realize I wasn't the person he thought I was either. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday morning, not at our house, at my attorney's office, but Marcus didn't know that yet. He thought we were going to couples counseling, something I'd suggested casually over breakfast, framing it as wanting to reconnect. He agreed immediately, too quickly, like relief. I'd arranged everything carefully. Patricia had coordinated with a process server. The papers were ready, but before we got there, I needed him to understand what he'd done. I drove. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, making small talk about work, about the weather, completely unaware. When we pulled into the parking lot of the office building, he looked confused. "This isn't the counselor's place," he said. "No," I said quietly. "It's not." Inside Patricia's office, I laid out the screenshots, the bank statements, the timeline, the photos I'd obtained showing him and Jennifer together at 3 different hotels. I watched his face go through every stage, confusion, then panic, then anger, then finally resignation. "I was going to end it," he said. "No, you weren't," I replied. "You were going to keep lying until you couldn't anymore." Patricia slid the divorce papers across the desk. She explained his options in that same clinical voice. He could sign, or we could do this the hard way. Either way, the outcome would be the same. He signed. It took 14 minutes. 6 months later, the divorce was final. I kept the house. He kept his apartment, and whatever dignity he had left, which wasn't much after Jennifer leaked their texts to someone at the office and the whole thing became public anyway. I didn't leak anything. I didn't have to. Sarah came over the day the papers were officially processed. We sat in our kitchen, my kitchen now, just mine, and I made scrambled eggs the way Marcus used to. They tasted better than they ever had before. "You did the right thing," Sarah said. "I did the smart thing," I corrected her. "That's different." The right thing would have felt righteous, would have felt like victory. Instead, I just felt tired and clear. I'd lost 7 years to someone who was never really there. I couldn't get those back, but I could make sure I didn't waste any more time wondering if I'd missed something, if I should have tried harder, if the wall was my fault somehow. It wasn't. I'm dating again now, slowly. I notice things about people differently than I used to. I watch for the small inconsistencies, the gaps between what someone says and what they do. I'm not cynical about it. I'm just awake. Last week, I ran into Marcus at the grocery store. He looked older, tired. He nodded at me. I nodded back. We didn't have anything left to say. And that was exactly how it should be.